I'm going to hit record. One moment. All right, and we are live. Coach Michael, thank you so much for being here, man. I'm so excited about this. This is going to be a fantastic conversation.
Absolutely.
I was looking forward to this all weekend long. So I appreciate you joining the podcast today. Give me one or two things that our audience would best recognize you for.
Yeah, they would best recognize me for being a championship women's basketball coach for a decade, maybe speaking at 10X, Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and the creator and founder of the Monster Producer Coaching Program.
So one of the reasons why we really wanted to have you on is we talk a lot about success on this podcast and what it takes to be successful. And the journey of being successful is not an easy one. Half of knowing what you want is knowing what you have to give up to get it. Yeah. Right. And one of the funny things that being successful has with it is you got to give up a lot of things to get there. Right. You want 6-pack abs. Guess what? You're giving up donuts. It's just a reality. So we're going to get into all of that. But those are some huge accolades that you have experienced over the last couple of years. How many books have you either written or breathed on? I feel like I see your stuff everywhere.
Yeah, I've written 16 books. I've built a lot of, started with one, right? When I was 25 years old, just because I felt like I had a message. One became two. Now we can pump these things out pretty quickly. But and I believe if life's worth living, it's worth writing down. And we built a number of what I would consider best-selling coaching programs, intellectual property, online programming, licensing plays. There's a lot of things that we do, but it all comes back to one core theme, which is everybody needs a good coach in their life.
That's right. So let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town called Woodbury, Tennessee. 2,500 people inside the city limits. I was raised by a single mother who had me when she was 16. My dad was 18. They married for 1 year and then got a divorce. And then I really didn't have anything to do with my dad. He didn't have a lot to do with me, pretty much my whole upbringing of my life. So it's kind of tough, rugged mother who got up and taught me to get up every day and go to work. We don't whine, we don't complain, we don't make excuses. We look like somebody when we leave the house. And so a lot of my toughness comes from that upbringing. And we weren't poor, but we weren't middle class. And, she made sure I had whatever I needed. But when I go back and look at the houses we lived in today and looked at, man, it's like we lived in that house, like we didn't know, right. where we live. We and I certainly didn't know. And mom worked 2 and 3 jobs. So she used to take me down to the local baseball field when I was, 4, 5, and 6 years old. And I just became fascinated with sports. I became fascinated with coaches. And there was one coach down there who tended to me, fed me. Her name was Mickey Vincent, which was really odd. She was a female coach coaching Little League baseball. She was, in a kind of a male world. Yep. But that woman, like I said, she fed me. She tended to me. She cared for me. She said to me when I was 6 years old, son, one of these days, you're going to be a great coach. She could see that in me at 6. Wow. And so that would kind of cast this vision in my life. And I began to hear that all of my upbringing from my coaches. You're going to be a great coach. You're going to be a great coach. You're going to be a great coach. And so that was instilled in me very early. So I actually started coaching at 15, junior pro basketball. I was a head coach at 18 years old at elementary school. And then I became the youngest head coach in the state of Tennessee at the second largest high school at 22. And so I kind of found my voice early in life. I don't know why, just by the grace of God. I found my calling very early. And so I've really spent the last 28 years coaching people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, also all socioeconomic backgrounds, all over the world. And so that athletic coaching became business coaching at 31 years old when I retired from athletic coaching.
That's such a different story, right? And meaning that, being raised, most successful people that we've interviewed on this show have had difficult upbringings.
Yeah.
There, for whatever reason, seems to be a almost one-for-one correlation. Not quite, but pretty close to tough upbringing, successful later in life.
Yeah.
I could only chalk that up to you get that sort of fire in your belly because going hungry and being cold and not having anything, it gets in you, it kind of gets in your bones, if you will. And
Right.
you never really outgrow it. It kind of sets in, and then your whole life, you're grinding for more and more. And you'll be 50, 60, 70 years old with I meet these guys who are multimillionaires, and they're still worried about going broke tomorrow. And they're still worried about the cost of things that are affordable, right? It is really interesting that there's a correlation for that. But for you to find your voice so early, that's very unique. Most people are kind of lost and stumbling and bumbling around for a while.
Yep.
Do you think, is this a chicken and the egg question? Do you think that you found your voice, or because that coach early on had kind of put that fire in you, that spark in your brain, that you thought, wow, I am good at this thing. And that was it. You hit the ground running. What do you think that was?
It's interesting that you asked this question, because in my new book called Flip the Switch, it's a book about how to activate the prey drive in a person, which is that instinctual ability to see something and go get it.
Yep.
There's actually a chapter called Screw Your Why in that book. And I know it's going to be controversial because there's so many Simon Sinek fans, and I'm a Simon Sinek fan. But here's the understanding I have from coaching people for 28 years. I didn't know I wanted to coach until I started coaching. I think that many times you don't find your purpose finds you. And it finds you through pursuit, through working a muscle, through trying different things. Like I worked in a bank. I was terrible. I pumped gas. I was the worst gas pumper in the world. There's all these jobs that I did, like thinking like I wanted to work in a bank because they dressed up and wore a suit every day. I was terrible. I hated it. And then when I became a coach, it's like, man, I love this. I had a coach once that used to ask, what could you wake up every morning and be both fascinated and motivated by for the rest of your life? Okay. And I am fascinated and motivated by what makes a person perform at a higher frequency, what activates the prey drive in a person, right? And so I actually believe, for all the people who watch your show, for all the people listening, I don't think you have to find your why to do something big in the world. And I would even go further to say, if you ask the top 5 people I'm coaching right now, which are all making or earning personally between $1 and $10 million personally, if I said, what's your purpose? What's your why? Many of them couldn't tell you. It's just they have something you can't put in them and you can't take it out of them, right?
Yep.
It's just who they are, man. And I wrote down a note while you're talking about that, because the biggest worry I have about my children, I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 2-week-old son.
Congratulations.
And the biggest worry I have, and I made another note for myself right now, is the life that my daughter is exposed to. You know, she lives in $1 million house. We have a jet. She, you know, like part of the reason I'm who I am today is because I didn't have all those things, the work,
100%.
the chip on my shoulder, the muscle I work. So, you know, I'm constantly looking for things for my daughter to be exposed to, so she understands this ain't normal. Like daddy had to work 20 years to have these things.
Yes.
Right. There was like you said, sacrifice, and 80 to 100-hour work weeks and 20-hour days and getting knocked down and having breakdowns and breakthroughs. Like, I want you to understand this ain't normal. Yep. Like, so thank you for reminding me of that, because I got to make sure my kids don't end up soft in the world. There's too many soft kids and too many soft people in the world today. And I just did a podcast before this, and they asked me the biggest difference between coaching kids and coaching adults. And I'm like, man, adults are wussies. They can't take any criticism. They can't get any feedback. They don't know how to show up every day. They don't know how to fight through adversity. Like that's the biggest difference. The kids were tougher than the adults were. That's what I learned when I started coaching adults.
Congratulations on the little ones. I also have a 7-year-old daughter, so I know exactly what you're talking about. very similar to you in that grew up single family, not very much money, etc. Kind of have this fire in the belly, I guess, to work all of the time. Do I know my why? All I know is that I'm absolutely terrified of being broke.
Yeah.
Right. That I can tell you. If that's my why, then that's all I got, because I am terrified of being broke. If you put $10 million in my account today, $100 million in my account, $1 billion in my account, it would not change what I do and how I do it on any level. It's just, it's innate. I have to keep working. It's a weird, it's almost like a compulsion. Like I feel that, and I know other successful people have felt the same way, and that are far more successful than I am, where they've said, you can almost understand how people who have a compulsion to gamble, people who have a compulsion to drink, you can almost understand it, because in a way that you're like that, except your thing happens to be more positive than meth, right? Than gambling, right? But you feel that sort of compulsion. That's the only way I can really describe it. Is you don't have I don't choose this. It sort of chose me. So yeah, I'm right there with you in terms of how that happens to you, if that makes sense. Okay, so going back, you had this near vertical career in being a coach. You talked to us up to your 22.
Yep.
Take us through 26, 25, 26, 27. What does that look like?
Well, 22 to 25, I'm motivated. I was studying a guy named Dr. Stephen Covey. Covey wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Of course.
But what he really introduced me to is a theory very few people ever talk about, which is called the whole person theory. And the whole person theory changed my whole deal, because the whole person theory says people are made up of 4 parts: a body that's physical, a mind that's mental, a heart that's emotional, a spirit that's spiritual. And to talk about potential, we need to learn how to tap into all 4 parts.
Yep.
And I became a master as a coach of tapping into all 4 parts of my player's nature. I called it a competitive intelligence. You got IQ, EQ, SQ, physical quotient. Well, what I was building was a competitive intelligence. My players were smarter than other people's players. They were more connected. But from 22 to 25, I'm motivated through fear. I was young, dumb, naive. I thought this is the way you do it. And let me tell you something. I didn't win any championships during that period. 25 years old, because I know you're going to ask me about my breakdowns. 25 years old, man, I can't tell you how pivotal that year was for me.
Really?
3 big things happened to me at 25. One, I'm sitting on the back patio after a loss with one of my friends. I was the women's coach. My best friend was the men's coach. We lived in the same house. We lived in the same apartment, and we're best friends in school. And we both got beat that night. And we came home and we were both sitting on the back patio lamenting about losing, and I just looked at him and I said, man, let me ask you a question. Would you get excited about playing for you? If you had to come in and play for you every day, would you be excited about playing for you? He's like, no, absolutely not. And I said, I wouldn't be excited about playing for me either. I'm going to make a decision tonight on this back porch that I'm going to be a coach people love to play for. I'm going to transform me. I'm going to be intense and positive. I'm going to quit being negative. I'm going to quit motivating through fear. I'm going to instill discipline, but man, I'm going to be like Pete Carroll, like Dabo Sweeney. Like I'm going to be this intense and positive coach. And when I made that decision, for the next 7 years, we won 25 games a year. We won the conference 4 times. We would go on to win state championship. My team would then go on to win 7 of the next 9 state championships.
Jeez.
Like
that's incredible.
It was a ridiculous run. And here's the deal. It all started when I changed me. Now, around this time, I also go through a terrible breakup. So I'm changing me, but I meet a woman I think I'm going to marry. I buy an engagement ring. Okay. We date for a year. She's perfect. She comes to all of my basketball games. She supports me. We went to the same high school. And a year into it, she starts acting crazy. She wanted to go out to clubs. She was distant. I was like, what is going on? Like I thought we were going to get married here. I buy an engagement ring. And before I gave her the engagement ring, she broke up with me. Okay. And I was devastated. And when I say devastated, clinically depressed. So I'm a head coach. I'm supposed to be known for motivation.
Right.
Like these people look at me like this is one of the top motivators in the world, man. And I can't get out of bed in the morning. I'm sick every day. So during that period, I go through this terrible breakdown for like 6 months, but nobody knows it because
Right.
I'm just
Gotta hide it.
I'm just faking it. I'm working 18 hours a day. I'm faking through it. But I come to a realization during this period that has served me so well in my life. I said, I will never allow another person to dictate and control my confidence again. I will never place my destiny in another person's hands, which is what I've done. I put all my confidence in this one person.
Yes.
Now, because of that, I was going to write the book called Swag, which is a book about confidence. How do you build, maintain, and protect your greatest asset? I would become one of the top thinkers in the world about codifying confidence, turn it into a science. Much of the people that hire me to help them protect their confidence. And so because of the breakdown, I had all these breakdowns and breakthroughs at 25. And that really is what catapulted my career. So the growth I had from a maturation standpoint, from 25 to 30 was just ridiculous. Like I accelerated like you can't imagine. And at 30 is when I won a championship, 10 years into it, right? Like I was I was basically at that 10-year mark, the 10,000 hours of practice mark. I had worked the muscle. I'd had breakdowns. I'd had breakthroughs, but there's not a person I coach today that confidence is not involved in some way. If I hadn't gone through that, it's the best thing ever happened to me. And here's what's funny. I was speaking not long ago and I gave back to my hometown. I told that I would come back to my hometown and speak to all the teachers because they were instrumental in some way in helping me be successful. Right. And I get there to speak and guess who's sitting on the front row? That girl who broke my heart. And guess what I did? I put up a big picture of my beautiful wife. And I said, man, I'm one of the luckiest guys in the whole world to be married to this woman right here. It was one of those moments of vindication. But my point was, it was cool. It was cool. Listen, I'm thankful. I'm not mad at her. I'm actually thankful because
of course
we'd have been married and divorced in a very short period. I was not thinking clearly. I was thinking emotionally. And so these are some of the breakdowns I've had that have helped me. Like I was coaching a guy this morning that just went through a terrible divorce. And I said, man, I have studied transition at a very high level. I can tell you exactly where you are in the transition cycle right now. You're lost and disoriented. And when you're lost and disoriented, see, there's an ending of something.
Yes.
There's a disorientation period where you're lost. Like the way it used to be is not there anymore.
Right.
And so your confidence is typically very low during that period.
Yep.
So when we're low in confidence, guess what we do? We go back to old habits and new ways. And we go back to old girlfriends. We go back to old bad habits. I worked in the prison system for 4 years, rehabilitating maximum security offenders in the prison system. And here's what I figured out. When you get out of prison, you don't have any money. Yep. You don't have any good friends. You don't have any driver's license. You don't have any job. What most of them do is just turn around and go right back to what they were doing before.
Right.
And back in prison. And we pay for it. Like that's taxpayer money we're paying. So I've had all these unique experiences that have kind of prepared me to be kind of this America's coach of all these different people I've coached in my lifetime and so many things I've gone through personally in my life to help people.
Where do you think the self-awareness came from? Because one of the issues that I see with a lot of people, regardless of age, but specifically young people, is they're just not aware of themselves. They're not aware of how they're perceived. Yeah. They're rarely aware of their strengths. They often have overconfidence for the one or two things that they're good at, yeah, and then no confidence in everything else, right? So it's very binary in that way. And so they tend to drift through, if I'm being honest, I see a lot of folks, especially men, unfortunately, drift through their 20s and cruise into their 30s with being blissfully unaware of who they are, right? What their temper is like, what their sort of persona, for lack of a better word, like how do people perceive me? Am I the happy-go-lucky guy? Am I the serious guy? Do people think I have a temper, right? The vast majority of people never sort of pause and say, hey, how does the world perceive me? How do I look to everyone else? So for you to be 25 and have that self-awareness, I know we're talking quickly and going through this. You mentioned sort of 6 months of being sort of deeply depressed. And I appreciate you being candid, because people have to understand that even a guy like you, who's had enormous success in their career, all these championships, written all these books, et cetera, specifically around confidence and many other personal attributes, still had 6 months of just feeling unbelievably bad, right? And had to go through that fire, as it were. But where do you think that self-awareness came from? Was it an epiphany, or was it sort of you recognize some small things over time? Like, walk us through that.
I think from 20 to 30, I didn't have a great self-awareness. I think I was incredibly selfish. I think I was laser focused on building a championship culture at the expense of other things. I didn't understand how my actions affected other people. Did I do my job? Of course. I built a national championship program. I became known and famous for being one of the top coaches in the country.
Yep.
But there was a lot of collateral damage. And the collateral damage is I didn't have an awareness of how my actions affected other people. Like if it didn't fit into my world, man, I didn't want to do it.
Yep.
Well, I think as I've matured and coached so many people and studied human nature, I think you really need to study human nature. Robert Greene's got the book out, The Laws of Human Nature. And man, it's just so good of why people are oblivious to their own thought patterns, how they can be selfish and narcissistic and neurotic. And, for me, as I'm in my 40s now, early 40s, now I'm really getting to know me. Like, I think for a long time, I was a stranger to my own self.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've studied my DISC profile at a very deep level. I've studied my predictive index. I've studied my Colby. I've studied, and that now what I'm interested in is, until you know you, it's very hard to get to know other people.
Without a doubt.
And so we're big in my company. I'm certified in the DISC, like just understanding me. Why am I the way I am? Why do I wake up angry? Well, I'm not angry at other people. My DISC profile, a high D, one of the traits of a high D is they're frustrated a lot. I'm not mad at my wife. I'm not mad at my kid. I'm not mad at my president of my company. I'm not mad at my personal assistant. I'm mad because it's me versus my potential.
Yes.
And I'm not getting there fast enough.
Yep. Well,
if you don't understand me and you work with me every day, you may say, well, dang, man, why is this dude pissed off at me? Like, what did I do to him? It's not that. It's, right. I have such big goals and such big aspirations. So let's go back to your self-awareness question. I think my exposure to so many things and so many people I've studied has helped me to understand we're all screwed up. We all have insecurities. We all are imperfect people. Like, that's just the deal, man. Like I was with a guy this weekend who's seems like the most confident guy in the world, and he is, but he still has insecurities.
Of course. He
still has issues. He still has problems. So when you get that, you begin understanding it's okay. I'm a little screwed up. This is how I'm hardwired. I'm a little screwed up, but it's okay, man. You're a little screwed up, and everybody. So I think this self-awareness of, hey, I can be insensitive. Hey, I can be brash. Hey, I can be difficult. Hey, I can be persistent, so persistent that I push people away. Right. Like,
mm-hmm.
Like you could be obsessed and so passionate about something that you actually create the counter of what you're trying to create.
Right.
Like, you drive so hard, you drive people away. Like, I think about Michael Jordan when I watched that Last Dance. Like, it'd be great playing for Jordan, but man, I'm sitting there thinking, man, it'd be miserable playing with this dude.
Oh yeah.
He's constantly like picking at you and pushing you and calling you names, and like there's days those guys had to go home and go, man, we hate this dude. Like I love him and I hate him.
Right. Yes.
He's helping me, and so, and I'm sure he has these awarenesses of his own self, right? He's the
mm-hmm.
greatest of all time, but he probably says, man, I could be a real difficult dude.
100%. So his level of perfection or drive comes actually from low self-esteem, right? He has low self-esteem constantly that he is chasing to satisfy, that he wants to do better, right? And so it's this odd combination of outward projection of confidence, inside voice is this sort of low self-esteem, like I'm not good enough. And so when you have this weird I'm not good enough thing, man, it can either eat you up or you can eat it up. Yeah. It's up to you to make that. And boy, did he just decide that. One of my favorite singers, Frank Sinatra, also widely known as being very similar in that way. So his persona is this very confident, casual, I've got my Jack Daniels in my cup and I'm just relaxed. But behind closed doors was notoriously impossible to deal with, perfectionist to the 10th degree, right? And when you look at his singing ability relative to the Rat Pack, he wasn't the best singer, right? Many of the other singers were actually technically better singers than he was, but we all know Frank Sinatra, right? Still today, Frank Sinatra, every kid knows who Frank Sinatra is years after the guy passed away, because he had a little bit of that in him as well. That sort of constant drive to want more. It's what I find interesting about Frank and of Michael is that both of them, their persona is one of sort of a relaxed, confident, I got this, right? But when the door is closed, they are animals, just animals in going after that dream and attaining their goal, right? And they're known to be pretty rough to get there, right? At the end of the day. Yes. So I want to go into one more thing. Sitting on that patio, having that kind of heart-to-heart moment about, I'm kind of a dick and I motivate through fear, and I wouldn't want to play for me. So why would anybody else want to play for me? Right. That's a kind of self-awareness that's unique, because you're realizing that there's probably a bunch of people who aren't too excited to be working for you or working with you. Right.
Yeah,
that doesn't feel good.
No, and there's a fine line, between confidence and arrogance. And I think confidence is the memory of success. Mm-hmm. It is an internal knowing that you can create or manifest something even when other people don't believe you can.
Right.
Arrogance is when your self-appraisal is much greater than your market value. Okay?
Yes.
Now, here's the interesting part. When I wrote the book Person of Interest, which has been one of my best-selling books, I really wasn't a big person of interest in the world yet. I was writing it from an aspirational perspective. Like, I want to become a person of interest. I have studied people of interest. These are the ingredients of people of interest, and I want to become one of those guys, right? So at 25, I was smart enough to know I'm good, but I'm not that good. Mm. And I'm good enough to win, but I'm not good enough to win a championship, as evidence of me not winning a championship yet.
Right.
So I kept going, and I see a lot of people today that they really just overvalue how good they are. Mm. And they're all ages, and they're producing. Here's a good example. I've coached mortgage originators, and I worked for one company, and they paraded around their $25 million producers. Okay. Like they were the best thing in the world. They strutted around. They were confident and arrogant. And I just could not understand this, because I was coaching other mortgage companies where their top producers were doing 100 million. And I'm sitting here like, I'm confused, man. Like why is you see what I'm saying? Like, why are you strutting around like you're really good when I'm coaching people doing 4 times what you are? I've coached insurance people that were making $250,000 a year that were strutting around as if they were worth $20 million. And worst part, them not be coachable. Like, hey, I'm not, there's nothing you could teach me.
Yep.
There's nothing you could teach me. And I have a theory, and my theory is simple. One, I can learn anything from anybody, anywhere, anytime. I can learn from my 7-year-old. I can learn from my 2-week-old. I can learn from my wife. I can learn from my employees. I can learn from anybody. That's one of my principles. You don't have to earn more money than me for me to learn something from you.
Right.
Okay. Now, here's my other principle, though. If somebody is earning more money than me, and that's just a quantitative value that we can place in the world,
sure,
they know something I don't know.
Yep.
So if I earn $1 million a year and the person out there is earning $200,000 a year, well, I know something they don't know about money. Okay. So why would they not go, man, this dude could teach me something? Like he went from a high school basketball coach to a multimillionaire. How did he do it? How did he go from making $60,000 a year to this? Well, it's not because I'm special. It's probably because I worked a little bit harder. I studied a little bit longer. I went a little bit deeper. But my point is, that's one thing that's always baffled me about why some people get to a level and then they think they're at the top, so they're not open to any coaching. Yep. They're not open to any getting better.
That's so accurate, because over and over, you see that people, one of the ways that champions continue to be champions is it's extremely difficult to become a champion in whatever that might be, whether it's earning money or whether it's athletics, entertainment, you name it, doesn't matter. It's very difficult to become sort of one of the best or the best, but it's even harder to keep it, of course, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so much easier that once you're there to kind of sit back and go on autopilot. And, you know, you just brought up two stories that come to my mind. So one is George St. Pierre, my favorite UFC fighter. GSP's, been a world champion with the UFC multiple times over, pound for pound, one of the best fighters of all time. And just recently, he was learning how to kick from Joe Rogan, who has never won a UFC, right? Because GSP thought, hey, I think I might be able to learn something here, right? He can do something I can't quite do. So he was humbled enough to go, hey, this guy can do something I can't do. Even though I'm a 2, 3, 4-time world champion, whatever the number is, I can still learn something. So I love that humility. And then I recently was listening to an interview with Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart was talking about the first and only time he ever met Jeff Bezos. Because he saw Jeff Bezos in a room and he's with his buddy, and his buddy's like, no, man, play it cool. You don't need to talk to him. And Kevin Hart's like, what are you talking about? He knows something I don't know. I want to know that. That's Jeff Bezos. And he hauled ass over there and went to talk to him. Now, let's just say what it is. Kevin Hart is one of the most successful entertainers of this generation, right? Comedian who sold out Madison Square Garden, a bazillion movies and specials. Like, he's in the top 1% of his category. And he sees Bezos and hightails it across this room to go, hey, Jeff, you know something I don't know. Tell me more. Yeah. Right? It's that humility that key people have.
Yeah, one of my mentors was a guy named Don Meyer. And Don Meyer, you wouldn't know of Don Meyer because he coached at a small Division II or maybe Division III Christian university called David Lipscomb in Nashville, Tennessee. He actually won, I think he's won more games than John Wooden.
Wow.
And so he was kind of this unknown superstar. And he picked up the phone one day and he's, teaching other people, and he's just incredible. I mean, he was just an incredible coach. And he picked up the phone one day and he called Tim Corbin, who's the head coach at Vanderbilt, but they didn't know each other. They're in the same city. Tim Corbin's winning, world championships. Don Meyer's winning NAI championships, but they don't know each other. And Don Meyer calls Tim Corbin, and Tim Corbin answers the phone, said, "This is Tim." And here's what he said. He said, "Hey, this is Coach Meyer." He said, "You're real good. Now tell me how." That's all I want to know. He's like, "Look, man, you're real good. Now I want to know how you became so good." Yep. And this is one of the greatest. Okay. Now I was smart enough at 27. So I kept getting to the same place every year and getting beat.
Yep.
I'd get to the same place every year. I'd get beat typically by the same person. I'd go home and whine, pout, feel sorry for myself, blame everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I finally said, man, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. When you study change, change is a function of pain. It's a function of potential. It's a function of practicality. Yep. To your point earlier in the show, there's a cost to change. And if you perceive the cost to be greater than the reward, you will stay where you are and complain about it. 100%. Well, at that point, I'm there, man. I'm sick and tired of winning 25 games, getting to the same place, getting beat by the same person, and going home. So I called a meeting with 6 championship coaches. And I said, look, I'm buying dinner. It's on me. All I want to know is how I can win a championship. And all 6 of them, this is what's crazy, in a matter of 3 minutes in our conversation, told me what I needed to do that I'm doing.
My guess is it was incredibly simple as well.
It was incredibly simple. One person said, your schedule's not tough enough. So when you get in big games, your players fold. They're not tough enough. They're not battle tested is the word he used. Never forgot that. I went back and scheduled the toughest teams in the country. One of them said, you rely too much on 1 or 2 players. So great coaches shut those 2 players down. Your other 3 players can't score. So you can't score enough points. Another person said this, right? Like it was like gold. And I went back and I tweaked my strategy literally like this much. And the very next year I went 38-3 and won a championship. And now here, let me give you a second example. John Maxwell is in my industry, right? John Maxwell, he sold 60 million books. He built a coaching program, a certification, where he got 30,000 certified coaches at 5,000 a piece minimum. That's 150 million. And 10 years ago, I was at a conference, and the guy who helped him do that was there. His name Paul Martinelli. Martinelli gets up, he introduces himself. I'm the new president of John Maxwell's coaching certification. Over the next 10 years, we're going to do this. And I was sitting in the audience, you know, at 30, 32, 33 years old. And I go, I need to know that dude. Like my instinct, my prey drive said, get to know him.
That's the guy.
But I didn't get to know him. I went 10 years, never picked up the phone, never called him, never sent him an email. 10 years later, this past year, I reached out to his office and I said, how much does it cost me to spend time with Mr. Martinelli? And they said, here's how much it costs. I said, book it. I spent 90 minutes with him. Okay. Within the first 5 minutes, here's what I said. How did you do 150 million? Within the first 5 minutes, he showed me how he did it. Now, how stupid do you think I felt that I wasted 10 years of my life not asking him what the formula is?
But what is it? Is that pride? Is that ego? What is that? Is that shame? What is it?
Yeah, in that case, it wasn't pride or ego. It was actually a consideration. Now, this is something I teach my students. A consideration is an internal thought that prohibits an action. Okay. Mm-hmm. So for example, here was my consideration. Oh, he's famous. Oh, he's running John Maxwell's company. He would never take any time with me. I'm not worthy of be right. So that was kind of my considerations is, oh, he would never spend time with me. Well, let me tell you something. You pay somebody, almost anybody will spend time with you if you pay them enough money. And
that's true.
Here's the deal. It wasn't hard and it wasn't that expensive compared to what he told me. Yep. And so it was really, this is a big problem for a lot of people. That goes back to the fear of rejection, fear of whatever, fear of embarrassment. Fear is an emotion created by a belief that something's going to harm me. It is created by belief. Hear that statement. That is a definition of fear. It is an emotion, a negative emotion created by a belief that something's going to harm me. Where did the belief come from? It comes from my past. Right? What if I change the belief, right? Like there's a series that a famous pastor did named Jimmy Evans called I Changed My Mind. And I changed my mind about fear. I changed my mind about worry. I changed my mind about insecurity. I changed my mind about this. It's an incredible series. And he literally said, I just changed my mind one day. I literally changed my mind about fear. Okay, let's go back to that story at 25 years old. 25 years old, I'm rejected. I feel what? What did I feel? Rejected.
Yes, 100%.
I wanted her. She didn't want me, which was why I pouted around and had to be on drugs and, you know, depression and all those things because I felt so rejected. Another woman comes along in my life, and I write about this in my book, Everybody Needs a Coach in Life. 25 years old, this beautiful Italian woman comes along named Octavia Fontana. She's 10 years.
That's like a James Bond movie.
Let me tell you something. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful. She's tan. She's got blonde hair. She's drop dead gorgeous. She comes along. She's 10 years older than me. And she takes interest in me. Okay. Here I am like a little puppy crying and whining. I can't get out of bed. I'm worried about this girl who dumped me. This beautiful Italian woman is interested in me. And she comes along and really more than anything just becomes my friend. And she's kind of coaching me through this. And one day she says to me, the way you're looking at this is all wrong. And I'm like, what do you mean? I wanted her. She didn't want me. That is rejection, right? She's like, no. She's like, there is no such thing as rejection. She said, some people will want what you have. Some people will not want what you have. So what? Now, I want you to think about that.
Yep.
Okay. Now she says, I'm interested in you, but you can't even see that I'm interested in you because you're living in the past. Yep. Okay. Now let me tell you something. Tavi Fontana was 10 times prettier than the girl that dumped me. 10 times more mature. Hey, here's a better one. She's 10 times more interested in me. Yes. Now, here's my point to you. When I learned that, gosh, my life changed because even to this day, there is no such thing as rejection. I call on a person, I try to sell them my coaching service, so they say, man, I don't want it. Okay. Some will, some won't. So what? I'm only looking for people looking for me. That is a consideration. A consideration is an internal thought that prohibits an external action. That was my deal with Paul Martinelli.
I want to go back to that dinner with the other champion coaches, because oftentimes for people to make change positive in their life that will literally change their life forever, healthier, wealthier, happier, all of these things, they are actually really small decisions, active decisions that they have to make. They're not these massive changes that people sort of have constructs in their brain. So it reminded me of my favorite athlete of all time, which is Michael Schumacher, the most winningest driver ever in Formula One, the highest paid athlete, I believe still. He was the highest paid athlete. He was paid over $100 million just for his job in one calendar year. And he did this interview and he said, what makes a great racing driver? And he said, that's easy. The car has a limit. And a great racing driver drives that car at 102% of the limit, just over the limit, just a little bit more than the car can do. It's right on that ragged edge. And of course, the interviewer said, well, that's amazing. Well, why are you a champion? And he said, because I drive the car at 103%.
Yeah.
It wasn't I'm 100 times better. It's I'm this much better. I do this much more, a tiny fraction. And that's the thing that separates me from everybody else. It's not these massive, elaborate things that you have to do. And that's the sad part for me when I try to help people. And I'm not a coach. I don't pretend to be one. I don't play one on TV. I defer to you for your expertise. But when I help my friends and my network and what have you, I often say, you don't have to do these massive, massive changes. You have to start with these sort of small, deliberate actions. So as we're getting closer to the top of the hour already, believe it or not, I want to kind of get into the crescendo, if you will. So now you are a coach firing on all cylinders, right? You are making winning a habit. It's a habit for you that trickles down to your players. It's a habit for your players. Tell me what that is starting to feel like, right? You told me about the depression and you're missing beautiful women that are paying attention to and you're ignoring and you're being a bonehead like many 20-something-year-old guys are. But now you're in your 30s and you're really starting to win. Give me, what does that feel like? What decisions are you making there?
Pat Riley calls it the innocent climb in his book, The Winner Within, which I think was one of the best coaching books ever. He talks about cycles of teams. When I was winning a championship, it was pure innocence. Like I'm just chopping wood and carrying water every day, man. I don't know I'm going to win a championship. I don't know I'm going to become the best coach. Like I'm just doing it every day. Mm-hmm. And then I wake up and I'm in the middle of the floor, right? And 10,000 people are cheering us on. And it's that moment where you go, man, I did it. Like I had the same moment when I was speaking at 10X. I was the classic underdog at 10X. I was the least known person to be on that stage at 10X. Mm-hmm. And I had that moment again. So at 41, I'm speaking at 10X to 10,000 people. Right. And everybody's like, well, how did you do it? How did you get on stage? How did you get up there? How did you generate $1 million of new revenue from doing it? Like, man, I just kept doing it every day. I can't tell you when the moment's going to happen. So now I'm just now getting to my life where I wake up and I go, man, I got a great life. I got a great wife. I got great kids. I'm enjoying. Now I'm just starting to enjoy life because I have worked so hard for 20 something years. Really for 28 years, I've been coaching. It's kind of like, how do you write 17 books? You write the first one, man. Right. And so many people can't write the first one because of those considerations. How do you win your first championship? You just get up and do it every day. And one day you become a champion. How do you write a best-selling book? How do you speak to the hundreds of thousands of people? You just keep doing it every day. And here's the deal. You mentioned that slight adjustment. Mm-hmm. A good plastic surgeon, they say, never makes more than 2.2 millimeters of change, and they never make more than 7 changes. Mm-hmm. They don't make big changes. They make small changes. Here's the deal. Small tweaks, right? Small actions to tweak something could open up everything. It's like you're one person away from a new season in your life.
Yes.
You meet the right person and the right person blows your life up, gives you opportunity, puts you on a stage, gives you, right? Like think about Oprah Winfrey putting Robert Kiyosaki on the Oprah Winfrey show.
It changed his life forever.
And changed Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Think about, just think about it. Think about Phil Jackson walking into the Bulls and getting a coaching job and then helping them win a championship. Like you're like, so change for so many people are doing that. Like right now where I'm at in my life is I'm trying to become a national, international person. I'm trying to become the next Covey. I'm trying to be the next Maxwell, the next Cardone, the next whoever, right? And I'm 43. Most of those guys are 60 and above.
Right.
So I'm in my prime over the next 10 years to do it big. That's my goal, is to impact millions of people around the world. That's why I left high school coaching. Is I woke up one day and I said, man, it ain't enough. Like coaching 30
Can't scale.
Coaching 30 people is great. I want to coach 3 million people or 300 million people. Like that's what I want to do. So that's why I had the guts to leave. So many coaches will stay trapped. So many people will stay trapped in their jobs and be unhappy. And for whatever reason, I can't even explain it. I just had the guts to do it.
Well, that was actually going to be how I was going to finish off the interview, was digging into that piece. So how did you know when to leave and have frankly, the guts to leave? Because as you just said, you get known for this thing, you're good at this thing. It's easy to stay as that role, right? You're kind of on easy street.
I was bored. And because I wrote a book at 25 and then one at 26 and 127, I was getting asked to speak a lot to companies. Those companies were sometimes paying me more in an hour than I was making in a month as a high school basketball coach. It wasn't that I pursued. I actually wanted to go to college and be a college basketball coach, be the next Gino Auriemma. I mean, I'm from Tennessee, be the next Mel Pat Summitt. Like I, that was my dream.
Right.
I had no desire to do what I do today. And I started speaking and I go out and speak, and these companies would say, hey, what would it cost for us to hire you to be our coach? And many of them, like my first 3 contracts were 6-figure contracts. Like these are people said, look, we'll pay you 6 figures to be our coach. And so at 31, after I'd won a championship, remember when I started 15. So from 15 to 31, that's 16 years of grinding. Okay. And so at 31, I'm like, I'm tired. I'm bored. There's a bigger play for me. And I was getting requests to speak. So I'm like, I can do something with this. So I literally I went and spoke at a company one morning. I came back and I retired that day at 31. I cried. My players cried. People could not believe it. I mean, people could not, but I was speaking so much, people started to say, oh, he's got a big future over here. You know, and people started in the media started saying he's a motivator. He's writing books. Like there's a bigger play for this dude versus just be a high school coach. And so, but it took guts, man. It took guts to leave everything. That's all I ever knew was coaching. And so it took guts for me to leave and go, I can do this. I don't know how. I don't have it all put together, but I'm betting on me. Okay. It's going to be a fight, but I'm going to find a way to win. That's my mindset. And so 31, last 12 years, we've been fortunate to build a multi-million-dollar coaching company. Every day, all I do is get up and coach people around the world. It's great. It's great. It's a tiring and exhausting work, helping people, but it's also incredibly rewarding. Like I was coaching a pastor today in Miami. He don't have any money. He's in a tough part of Miami. He don't know what to do. He right. Like I said, man, let's start with my book, The Accountable Church. Read that book and then let me help you. It ain't about him buying something from me. It's about getting paid and knowing that I helped him.
Sure.
And that's good enough for me. Okay. That's good enough for me. If I help enough people, I'll make enough money.
Always. That is actually always the case, that if you do help enough people, you'll somehow, it takes care of itself. Universal truth. I don't know what it is, but that is always the case. Okay. One last question, because I got to ask for me, which is the courage. You say it so casually, like it's so easy, but let me just tell the listeners out there, especially those of you who haven't made very much money, to come from nothing, to make something of yourself, and then push all the chips in and go, all right, we're going to risk it on this.
Yeah.
That is it's hard to put into words. I lack the vocabulary to properly articulate how fucking scary that is. If you come from a middle class or an upper middle class family intact, and there's a bit of a safety net there, and you rub a couple nickels together and you're doing okay, and you risk it and it doesn't work, that's not scary. That's nothing. That's a zero in my world. That's a zero in your world.
Yeah.
But when you come from nothing and create something, and you've created something of yourself, and then you stop and risk it all to take that next leap, the level of fear that you have to overcome to do it is tremendous. So hats off to you. Kudos to you. People need to understand that is one of the most difficult things to do ever. I don't care what you do. So incredible. Coach Michael, this has been an amazing conversation. Where can people go? Like, where can we direct the people? Where should they go?
Here's what I would tell you. My top 4 books right now are free at my site. Go to coachburt.com. I think you pay the shipping, but they're there. I think that's a great place to start. You can see the boot camps I do, the coaching program. We're coaching people all over the world through a program called Monster Producer that I created 8 years ago, coaching companies every day. So, if you're looking for a great coach, go to coachburt.com, reach out and say, hey man, I'm interested. Then we'll do a strategy session. We'll find the right product for you, and then we'll help you play at a higher frequency.
I love it. Links to that in the show notes below. Coach Michael, thank you again for being on the show today. This has been amazing. Much love. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Till next time, when life is not a motivational poster, there is no try. Coach Michael.
Have a great day, man. Great questions. God bless you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.